Hello and welcome to NTD Canada News Election Special Series. I'm your host, Gary Bai. According to an Epoch Times article, the Conservatives are accusing Liberal Leader Justin Trudeau of calling the election to cover up details of what happened at Canada's only Level 4 laboratory. And Canada was kept in the dark about an important security pack consisting of the US, the United Kingdom, and Australia until the very last minute. Without further ado, let's get to it. The party leaders were on the campaign trail again on Sunday, making their final attempts to woo voters before Canadians go to the polls today. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole spent the weekend campaigning in Dundas, Kitchener, Markham, and Toronto, Ontario. O'Toole was trying to persuade right-leaning people from a vote split. He said, quote, "Justin Trudeau wants you to split the vote by voting PPC." The Tory leader promised his party is reaching out to everyone in this great country. O'Toole promised to, quote, "clean up the mess of corruption in Ottawa with accountability and transparency law," and Trudeau led the most corrupt government in our history. He criticized the Liberals for spending with abandon during the pandemic and increasing the debt, and then calling an unnecessary and unwanted election. "We can make sure that we do not reward Mr. Trudeau for calling a $600 million election," he said. He promised that a Conservative government will balance the budget for our kids or our grandkids. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau was in Aurora, Ontario on Saturday. On Sunday, he held several events in person and virtually across Canada. A key focus for Trudeau on the last day of the campaign was to call on progressive voters to choose him and his Liberal Party over other left-wing candidates. Trudeau was asked why Canadians should trust him given he had previously promised not to call an election during the pandemic. He didn't answer the question directly, but stressed that Canadians should focus on who to trust to get through the pandemic. He also used the question to attack O'Toole, accusing him of being untrustworthy in matters relating to assault weapons and women's right to choose. When the reporter said her question wasn't about O'Toole but him and why Canadians should trust him since, quote, "there are instances where you have not kept your word," Trudeau replied that any leader should be able to fall back on the core values that Canadians can trust. Once again, not answering the question. NDP leader Jacques powered through 7 ridings in BC. He asked progressives to ignore Trudeau's excuse for voting for Liberals to prevent Conservatives from winning. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet was campaigning in 7 locations in Quebec this weekend. He accused Trudeau of calling the election that we still don't know why we're having. People's Party leader Maxime Bernier was in rallies in Calgary, Innisfal, and Westlock, Alberta this weekend. Green Party leader Adrian was campaigning in Victoria on Saturday and in Toronto on Sunday. According to an Epoch Times article, the Conservatives are accusing Liberal leader Justin Trudeau of calling the election to cover up details of what happened at Canada's only Level 4 laboratory, where a Canadian government scientist reportedly collaborated with a high-ranking Chinese military officer. We now know why Justin Trudeau called this early $600 million election, risking the health of Canadians in the middle of a 4th wave of the pandemic, to prevent the release of the Winnipeg lab documents to Parliament and cover up what happened at the Winnipeg lab, said Conservative candidate McIntosh. The House of Commons ordered the Trudeau government to produce the Winnipeg lab documents. That order dissolved with the dissolution of Parliament. Chong made reference to a recent report by the Globe and Mail that scientist Xiangguo Qiu, who worked for the National Microbiology Laboratory, the NML, Qiu had collaborated with Chinese Major General Chen Wei, a high-ranking officer in the People's Liberation Army. Qiu, along with her husband Ke Cheng, also a scientist at the NML, and their Chinese students were escorted from the NML amid an RCMP probe in July 2019. Qiu and Cheng were formally fired in January. The Public Health Agency of Canada, which is in charge of the NML, said the termination was the result of an administrative matter and possible breaches of security protocols. It has declined to provide further details, saying that security and privacy concerns prevent the agency from disclosing further information. Opposition parties has pressed the government to release more information on the case, but the Liberals refused, also citing national security and privacy concerns. The House of Commons issued an order requiring the government to disclose the information, but the government took an unprecedented step. It took the Speaker of the House to court. The House Speaker said that he will fight tooth and nail to protect the principle that the legal system does not have jurisdiction over the operations of the House. Lawyers representing the House Speaker asked the federal court to strike down the Trudeau government's attempt to have a judge block parliamentarian from receiving documents. The case was dropped after an election was called and Parliament was dissolved. Michael Chong called on the Liberal leader to come clean on questions, including who approved cooperation between the Chinese military and scientists at the NML, and whether members of the Chinese military ever gained physical access to the lab, which has the highest level of biosafety, capable of handling the world's most dangerous pathogens. Chong also questioned whether Dr. Chu and Dr. Cheng ever passed Canadian intellectual property to the CCP and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the WIV. Chu shipped samples of the Henipavirus and the Ebola viruses to the WIV with permission from NML authorities in March 2019. In his statement, Chong questioned Trudeau's overall approach in dealing with the Chinese Communist Party. Conservative candidate Gardner Ginnis also wrote on Twitter that the Liberal leader aims to win a majority government in this election in order to, quote, bury the Winnipeg lab documents. Canada was kept in the dark about an important security pact among the US, UK, and Australia until the very last minute. The Trilateral Alliance is dubbed AUKUS, and they will see the countries involved share more military technology and information than they currently do, including those related to artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and cyber capabilities. 3 senior Canadian government officials told the Globe that Ottawa has not consulted on the deal before it was announced by the 3 countries' leaders on Wednesday, September 15th. One official said this is because Canada's allies consider Ottawa to be weak when it comes to standing up to the Chinese Communist Party. Canada is the only country in the Five Eyes alliance that has not banned Huawei infrastructure from its 5G network. Co-authors of the forthcoming book, Intelligence Analysis and Policy Making, The Canadian Experience, Stephanie Carvin and Thomas Juneau wrote in an article published in the Globe, quote, "There are clear takeaways from the establishment of the AUKUS partnership that the next government should take note of. Canadian officials need to engage their counterparts on a more sustained basis. And when they meet, they should have something to say that more clearly reflects Canada's interests. Allies and partners will find engagement with Canadians more beneficial if we bring a unique Canadianized perspective, which presupposes, of course, much more effort into defining those interests." Canadians go to the polls today as the party leaders made their final push to voters on Sunday. According to a new survey conducted by Postmedia Ledger, new polling data suggests that the Liberals and the Conservatives are in a dead heat, with Conservatives polling at 33% of decided voters and the Liberals at 32%. Meanwhile, the NDP is polling at 19%. The People's Party of Canada saw its numbers settle at just over 6%, and the Greens at 2%. As this election draws to a close, Ledger found a huge majority, 7 out of 10 Canadians, feel the election has been divisive and that Trudeau has led a cynical and angry campaign. Andrew Yin's Ledger Executive Vice President said voters, except Green supporters, found the campaign had been more divisive than previous elections. When asked who appeared angry during the campaign, 37% of Canadians said Trudeau, while only 20% said O'Toole. More than 35% of respondents said that Trudeau appeared to be more dismissive to those he disagreed with compared to 26% who said that about O'Toole. 35% of respondents also said Trudeau had run a cynical campaign compared to O'Toole at 30%. The survey showed that 44% of people thought Trudeau would say anything to appeal to voters, compared to 35% who said that about O'Toole. In said the winner would be determined by how effective the parties were at getting the supporters out. The survey showed that 22% of Canadians, with slightly higher numbers for NDP and Bloc supporters, might still change their minds, but more than 2/3 of Canadians have either made up their minds or have already voted. The survey showed that for the most part, the debates, protests against the Prime Minister, and even the crisis in Afghanistan had little impact on voters' minds, but 43% of people said the pandemic influenced how they intend to vote. With that said, thank you for watching NTD Canada News. If you liked this video, please give us a like and share. It will help more people see our channel. We'll be back with more comprehensive election coverage, and we'll see you next time.